I still remember that rainy evening in Paris as if it were carved into my memory. The Seine shimmered under the reflection of streetlights, droplets falling on the cobblestones like tiny stars spilled from the heavens. I, Amara Johnson, was sitting on my small foldable stool, shivering in a coat too thin for November. My sketchbook clutched tightly in my hands, my fingers trembling not just from cold, but from the weight of everything I had carried to get here. I was 23, black, and far from home. Born in a small town in Georgia, I grew up under the gentle but firm guidance of my grandmother. She had a voice that made even the mundane sound sacred. "Amara," she often said, "our ancestors lived so we could create, so our voices could be louder than the chains that tried to silence us. Every stroke you make is a story they couldn't write." Those words carried me across the ocean to Paris, a city of lights, of art and history, but not always of people who looked like me. I studied at the École des Beaux-Arts, trying to soak in everything I could, but studying in Paris was expensive. My scholarship barely covered tuition. Rent, food, and art supplies were a constant struggle. That's why every evening you could find me near the Seine, perched on my stool, painting portraits for whoever would stop. A sketch for €1 or two, enough to buy bread and maybe a crepe if I was lucky. Paris had a beauty that could hypnotize, but it wasn't always kind. I often overheard whispers in cafes, sometimes sharp, sometimes just curiosity coded in politeness. "Why is she here?" Or, "Is she supposed to be painting here?" Some tourists ignored me completely, and some crossed the street. My skin made me hyper-visible and invisible at the same time. Yet I persisted. Every sketch, every euro, every small interaction reminded me that my art was more than survival. It was a statement. It was resilience. I had my favorite spot near a crepe stand, the smell of sugar and butter mixing with the damp Paris air. I liked the way the lights reflected on the wet cobblestones and how people rarely paused long enough to notice the life unfolding in a small black girl's hands. But I stayed there, refusing to leave. That night, the drizzle became rain. My umbrella was useless against the sideways winds. My coat did nothing against the chill. Still, I stayed. Something told me I needed to, even as the coins in my jar barely clinked. And then I saw him. He stood at a distance, tall, imposing, a white man in his 60s. His long coat smelled faintly of leather, his posture perfect. He held a cane topped, with a silver falcon head glinting under the streetlight, and he was staring. Not casually, not politely. He was studying me. I froze. My heart raced. I'd had my share of curious tourists, but this gaze was different. There was recognition there. "Excuse me," he said finally, his voice smooth, deliberate. "Are you the artist who made these?" I nodded cautiously. "Yes, sir. I sell sketches here." He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I see talent," he said. There was no flattery in his voice, only acknowledgement. The way he looked at me felt almost dangerous, like he could see every part of my story I'd tried to hide. We spoke for a few minutes. I told him about my studies, my life in Paris, my struggle to survive. He listened without judgment, something I wasn't used to. Then he paused, studying the sketches. "Your style? It's very familiar. Have you studied the Montclair family collection?" I shook my head. "No, sir. I've never heard of them." He handed me a card. "I am Henry Montclair. My family has preserved art for generations. I've been searching for someone who resembles your style, someone who carries a story in their work." I stared at it. A story in my work? My sketches were survival, not fame. That night, I couldn't sleep. I remembered my grandmother showing Me old photographs, men and women with paint-stained hands holding canvases, expressions strong yet haunted. "One day," she whispered, "someone will see your art and understand. Not just the colors, Amara, but your story." Was Henry the one she spoke of? Could he really see what I carried in my hands? The next day, soaked and shivering, I went to Henry's gallery. White walls gleamed, air faintly scented with varnish and old paper. "Your ancestors," he began, leading me to a painting of a black woman holding a child, "were connected to my great-grandmother. She spoke of a family of artists from Georgia, talented, resilient, but separated from the world by slavery and circumstance. We believe you are their descendant." I felt my knees weaken. My grandmother's whispered stories had always felt like distant dreams, but here it was. Proof. Undeniable. "I want to help you show the world your story," Henry said softly. "Your talent deserves to be seen, just like theirs." Tears blurred my vision. For the first time, someone saw not just my skin, but my soul. My ancestors' struggles were alive in every brushstroke. Weeks passed. Henry introduced me to collectors, arranged exhibitions, and taught me to navigate a world that had always seemed closed to someone like me. I painted scenes inspired by Black resilience, jazz musicians in New Orleans, cotton fields transformed into art, the faces of ancestors I'd never met. Paris hadn't changed, but my world had. I could finally see my place in it. The gallery was packed. Visitors whispered and murmured as they gazed at my work. Portraits of Black lives, struggles, joy, and triumph hung on the walls. Some were moved to tears. Some I knew had never thought. To see Black beauty like this, a group of older Black artists from the diaspora nodded quietly in the corner. They understood the weight of carrying your people in your work. Henry leaned close. "Your grandmother would be proud," he whispered. Believed it. Walking along the Seine that evening, rain now just a soft mist, I felt something shift. Paris had once been indifferent, sometimes hostile, but now it had witnessed a Black woman who refused to remain unseen. I whispered a promise to my grandmother. "I will carry your story, Amara, and I will paint it for the world to see." And I knew it was true. My voice was no longer hidden. My ancestors were alive in my work. My art had become my story, and it would be seen. That night, the rain falling gently around me, I realized something beautiful. The world could try to ignore me, but it could not erase my heritage. I had found recognition, respect, and purpose, all in the most unexpected way. I had survived Paris. I had survived being invisible. And now, for the first time, I was truly seen.